Okay, gotta make sure that we were unblocked for that for a minute, but everything's working
Ooh.
great. Ooh. How's it going, everybody? We are Gaming Over 30, podcast where we talk about some of the things that we love since we were a child and how we now talk about it and live it today with all the perks and all the other things that it brings us. Welcome to the Halloween special episode, and I want to say I brought me a nice mask. What do you think, Chris? You think this is good? I think this works out. I even got RBG, so it's really gamer.
It's gamer as hell, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just like, can you even hear me, kind of thing. Like it's actually taking my headphones and my head, so that's a lot of big things is holding in right now.
Is it comfy with all that in there still?
Actually, it's not bad. To be quite honest, I was super surprised that this was the full mask thing. You kind of go
That's
with that.
awesome.
Yeah, so if anything, Spirit has grown over the years. It's definitely been giving me some actual stuff. Ooh, actually has a lot of different RPG. But I'm not sure if I could do that for 2 hours, so let's not do that. But that's not the question I have for you today, Chris. Chris, has a game ever really terrified you?
I think the closest I've gotten being scared, there's two for sure. One of them was Silent Hill 2, because I was probably early high school when I got that game for Christmas, and I got it with the guide and everything, and it was just during Christmas break. It's just me by myself in my room, all the lights off, playing that game. And you know what I mean? Just the atmosphere alone and stuff like that is what made me really kind of get scared. And then that one was just more like the type of game where it's like I would play with myself. I finally have to go to bed and I'd be like, let me turn on the light before I go to the kitchen. It's just all right, we're good. You know what I mean? Just it was giving me those eerie vibes. You know what I mean? The whole sound and stuff like that. I would just play it like kind of loud because I was just by myself. My room is separated from the rest of the house, so I was like, let's do this. That was like that would be like my most scared one, and then the other one would be like just like simple jump scare. And I was playing Five Nights at Freddy's for the first time. As when we had moved into the first house and stuff like that, and everyone was downstairs. I had my laptop hooked up to the TV, and so like I was playing it, everybody's watching me play and stuff like that, and it's all ours. Like maybe first, second time playing it, and we would take turns seeing how long we could last. And it was just like playing it, and then just freaking the jump scare would hit me, and I'd be like, "Oh no!" I get scared, and freaking everyone else would start laughing.
Dude, that was probably one of the, I want to say like easiest times, but I remember there was a fun time when we did all that, because I know we were all in your living room and we were kind of watching everything kind of go about, and we're all like, oh wow, that was the first time I heard about Five Nights at Freddy's, was when I finally saw you and everybody play it. And it was like, yeah, like the jump scares do kind of work sometimes, because it's really unexpected, because it's like building the anticipation. You're doing everything that you can. You're thinking everything's good. I'm gonna make it, and all ah! It's like, oh God, Jesus. It gets you, and I think it's good to admit, when a game can actually scare you, or at least the jump scares do get. 'Cause a lot of people talk about jump scares, like, oh, it's all just jump scares and stuff. It's like, yeah, because they work. It's like at
Yeah,
the end of the day, jump scares work. Like, it's hard to really be super scared about something. And honestly, like kind of the titles that you said are like the same ones. Like Silent Hill just had that creepiness to it, where like you didn't know where you are, like everything was new, and then you walked into a room and you're like, oh my God, what is that? Like stuff was just freaky in different aspects. And Resident Evil was like that too, a lot of the earlier ones, but I wasn't necessarily as scared. It was just more of like, I'm afraid to jump into a fight when I'm not ready to jump into a fight, kind of scared.
yeah, it was more of the survival part of scared for Resident Evil for me. Like, all right, I know probably something big is coming up because there's a safe spot right here. Do I have enough ammo? Do I have enough health? You know what I mean? What's gonna work?
Yeah. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today for our Halloween special episode. I thought it only makes sense if we actually talk about horror stuff, horror games, some of the horror games that we played. Why was it different? Could I play them now and feel the same way? I just kind of think that's the only thing we could have done today. Like anything else is, I mean, I was thinking about some horror themed games, but I haven't actually played a lot of horror themed games, like games that were just like horror theme or Halloween themed, I guess you could say. I know there's some out there, but is there one that you like played recently, or one that you're really fond of?
Never played recently, but I remember playing a Costume Party. I think it was
Hmm.
back on the 360 and stuff like that. And that was a fun time playing it. I never got to fully beat it, but it was fun playing it, getting your different costumes as a kid, stuff like that, going around the town. I was like, oh, this is a fun little game to try out and stuff like that, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever played a game because of Halloween. I mean, maybe because I was always trick or treating when I was younger and stuff. So it's like it's the one holiday that gets you out the house, not keep you in.
For real.
So it's just one of those things where like, oh, I never like stayed home and just play like video games, this the whole time. But I've enjoyed a lot of horror stuff, and I just kind of was just thinking about like, yeah, what game did I really play? Like, 'cause I didn't really own a lot of horror games. I'll just say that. Like, a lot of them were rented. A lot of them, Blockbuster, and all that stuff. Like, and there was
Yeah.
never something that I actually bought. And then I mean, I don't think anything on the Super NES or Nintendo 64 were things that scare me. Like it was just like, yeah, it was more to detach at that point. I think it was when PlayStation was like, oh, do I got some stuff for you? And it's
Yeah.
all like you're gonna be interested in 3D in a way you didn't think you were gonna be interested in 3D kind of thing. And so I don't know, like what was your first like horror game, if you can recall?
Oof, my first one. Oh man, that I don't. I think it has to be freaking Silent Hill 2 or one of the Resident Evils. I think it was Silent Hill 2 actually, because I was always like wanted to play Resident Evil, but I never was able to get it.
Hmm.
And so my parents knew that I wanted like a scary game, and I was really into wanting to play Silent Hill. And so they bought it for me for Christmas, and then they got me the guide to it too. And so I beat it the first time without the guide, just to like do it on my own, figure it out and stuff like that, and be like, all right, cool, like I enjoy this. But I think like one of the first things that it wasn't a horror game, but what I really got spooked out from was Ocarina of Time, when you have to go into when you go into the tree and stuff like that, and you have all the skeletons there attacking you and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Like I was little playing that game, and I can't believe I understood the concept of how to play that game at my age. And going into it was just, it means like you're little, you just play like, oh no, like they pop out of nowhere, then they have the face, and it turns all ugly when it turns around. You're like, I was like, oh, that's creepy. You know what I mean?
That was the well, right? When you got to like the graveyard and you got into the well and like all those
Yeah,
nasty kind of like enemies that you had to fight, and but they were like really grotesque. Even for back then, it was like, man, this is some freaky looking stuff here. Like Jesus Christ! And it was like, but, maybe we're younger and we added some flavor to that. But even now, like I look at the designs and I'm all like, yeah, this was actually made to give you horror,
yeah.
the nightmares and stuff. And I would not want this to be remade today, having to deal with all this.
Oh yeah. I'm the opposite though. Like I'm a huge fan of horror and stuff like that. Like I'm literally wearing one of my favorite horror movies is like Return of the Living Dead shirt. And then I
Dude,
have
you personify black clothing. That's what it's like, from what sense I've known you and stuff. I remember
yeah,
the first time that I saw you outside of work clothes, and I was like, "Yo, I was not expecting this at all." I don't know why I wasn't, but I was like, I saw a completely different. I wasn't thinking like polo shirts or anything. But man, you had so much heavy metal down, man. I was just kind of felt like I was getting in the mood for a concert. I was like, oh, I thought we were watching a movie. What's going on?
oh yeah. And then now I'm finally starting to like upgrade my wardrobe and stuff like that, head towards more like kind of a goth look in the sense that I've always wanted to do. But
Yeah.
when I was younger, those clothes was just so expensive to buy.
Oh, Hot Topic was just that's where I got all mine, man. It was just expensive to buy anything,
Oh
but
yeah.
those pants last. Like as much as people want to like talk about them and chains and all that, those pants have never had a rip, pull, nothing. Like I think there's somewhere. I'm not sure where they're at. I can't fit them for sure now, but
You still have
those
them?
are still good. I mean, because they were good quality. And if you took off the chains and stuff, I mean, they're just
Yeah.
baggy black pants. How was that any different from anything else around that time? Right?
Yeah.
Like you wore black pants. It's like not like it was like a new concept. So it was just like, yeah, of course. It's like they were just good working for $50. And now I think about like, man, $50 for a pair of pants today, that doesn't sound all too bad if you're trying to get a good pair of pants. But back
Yeah.
then it was all like, man, I can't see myself paying, this much a month. But they lasted longer than any pair of clothes I've ever owned. Outside of like suits. So Those were good lounge pants too, man. It was like, man, I just needed something I could put on to just have a lot of air go through it. So they're great lounge pants. I had to
Oh
leave the
yeah,
house. I get out, I can leave the house and not feel like I'm,
underdressed.
underdressed or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I never bought those trip pants because I always thought they were too like parachutey and baggy, and it
Hmm.
was just like the style I like because like I still am today, but I was a very mobile person, so especially like in high school and stuff. Like I would run over like rock walls and fences and like run across. Don't do ever do this at home, people. If you hear this, but I would run across traffic where my school was at to go meet my friends and stuff like that because I was an idiot.
Hmm.
And so like whenever I remember one time I borrowed a pair of trip pants from my friend and I wore them and everything. And I was like, how do you guys run in these? I was like running, it's like, and I was like, oh, this is horrible.
You don't run, you glide, man. You just let the air take you. Just but getting back to first Halloween game or horror games, gotta keep focused. Uh, yeah, I honestly I think mine's was probably it had to be Resident Evil only because it's like I remember it but vaguely like Resident Evil 1 and 2. I remember a lot about 3 because Patrick played it a lot. That was
Okay.
his favorite game, and when he was playing a lot, like I was really into it. So I remember a lot of stuff from Resident Evil 3. So those were like that franchise was something that I think I could probably vibe more than anything, just because like it was just one of those like, oh yeah, like I get it, like it's zombie apocalypse, and it's all that, but it was the same thing. It's all like, man, I'm gonna get into this room, try to figure something out, and then the camera angles, I think, what really sold it because it wasn't like a free form camera. You walked into a room, and then you got to a certain corner of it, and then the preference of or like our how everything looked, it just changed to a different corner, and then you just saw something. You're like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!"
Yeah.
And you just went back the other way. It's like that's not the way I want to go.
And
Yeah.
like the camera angles they had in those games too, it would like purposely get you kind of like confused at where you were at. And so you would turn
Mhm.
around in the corner, you go and be like, I think I'm supposed to go this way. And you would start walking and be like, no, wait, I already went this way. And some of that, which would kind of give you like those like horror movie vibes when you see them, when you're watching a movie and they're like, they get lost in the maze or they get lost in the house. Some of that. Then you think, how'd you get lost there? And some of that. And then you play the game, you're like, oh, that's how they got lost.
Mhm. Yeah, because those games like you had to keep searching forever. I remember back in the day where it's just you were searching every nook and cranny to find every kind of clue to find like, hey, what have I not been to? What especially when the whole like preference change or whatever. I know I'm saying it wrong, but like you had to go to that one corner just so that way all of a sudden you're like here and you're like, oh, there's a corridor or something like that, or like I was like, oh, like how did I miss it? And I was like, yeah, of course, it's like I missed it because that's just how they design it. And it's like I think the last one I played was Resident Evil 5 is one like, but that was like the one that like I for sure beat with like Denzel. So we played that co-op back in the day. But that one was not really scary at all. I think at that point we are kind of immune to like
Yeah.
all that. And like I said, it was more like go straight. You're gonna have a lot of things come at you. As long as you go straight, you'll be fine. So kind of lost the whole aspect of it.
Oh, yeah. Like, I think the other time I didn't really get scared and stuff like that, but I really just enjoyed like what it was doing and stuff like that because it kind of reminded me of a haunted house was playing Resident Evil 7 and with the PSVR
Hmm.
because my friend he bought the PSVR and stuff like that and he loved Resident Evil and he had 7 and so we all took turns playing it in VR and I was the only one who actually like enjoyed playing it and I was like on that thing for probably like an hour and a half just playing through it, going into the house, getting to the part where you get to like the garage where the car is and stuff like that and did that whole battle in VR. And I was like, oh, like it wasn't really much of like getting scared, just like really hyper excitement and like adrenaline. It's like, all right, it's coming. And it's like, all right, I'll dodge like this, now move this, and it was just cool seeing it in my face and stuff like that. And everyone's like, oh my god, like how can you do that? It's so scary. I was like, no, it's great. It's like a haunted house, but just not scary.
I will say, like, the best thing for anything horror or anything like that for it to really sell is how much of the immersion it actually builds. And I think VR is a really good, like, vehicle for that because you have everything here, taking up all your peripherals. Like, there's no other way you can look, and you're kind of invisible to everything on the outside now because it's all gone. And then if you wear headphones for all the sound and everything, you could really be kind of sucked into like what's happening in the game at that point to where now you're picking up all the sounds. you're just kind of watching, looking at everything, and then you're just like, okay, this is a little much at this point. Like it's ooh, like now, and you know what is if you have you ever played a horror game with an actual 5.1 surround sound?
No, dude, I would love to experience that.
That is like when that was one of the things where it's like some games that just have like that kind of scary feeling of it. Not really a horror game, but when you get to like to a dark area and they set the ambiance, they have the noises and all that. When you're hearing noises come from different directions, yeah, that's when you start like, closet light up, just so I could just kind of I need to be able to kind of just step out. I think what was Last of Us was kind of like that. 'Cause Last of Us likes to take you to like a lot of dark areas and stuff. And
Yeah,
when you're hearing like the creatures kind of walk around, and then you're hearing it like behind you, you're hearing it to the right, especially like the cracking, like you're like, ooh, now I feel like I'm actually having to kind of skeet by a little bit. It's like, oh no, no, I can't. I don't want to get caught by that. That thing will slap, the life out of me. But it's like when you heard it and you heard like and all that kind of all those elements kind of build up. You like
yeah,
your mind start doing some stuff that is not supposed to. Like this is all fake, but then you're just kind of like, oh, I'm more aware of the darkness in a way that I didn't really want to be. And now the darkness has become the enemy itself. And
yeah. I think the closest I probably got to that was I had bought the Razer's like THX spatial audio program for the computer.
mhm.
And so like I tried it out with like Destiny at first, you know what I mean, just to like check out how it sounds with like first person shooters and stuff like that. And I was enjoying it, and I was like, what else could I try it out? So I decided to like boot up Outlast, and then I was like, all right, cool, let's do this. Put the headphones on, start playing it, and I was just like playing it through. I was like looking around me, and I was like, I'm wearing headphones. Like, why am I doing this? But the sound quality from it working that way was just hitting it so well. I was just like, oh, this is dope. Like, I can really hear the difference now.
Oh yeah, no, especially when you play horror games on the computer, where you have the ability to do like the spatial sounds. Because I remember Razer had that out because it was pretty much like free for everybody at the time, where you kind of had like that not that 9 or 7 channel virtual sound and really kind of be able to kind of get into it. It's like it works out really well. Nothing beats having 11 speakers though. I'll tell you what.
Dude, I
Now,
can
like in the
imagine.
room that I have now that has like it's painted all black. And so like when the doors are closed, like everything else is dark, OLED screen, and then I got speakers on the ceiling. Like you start hearing some things like just kind of go off, like every kind of game kind of they're not really optimized for it, but sometimes the way that audio just kind of works for lower sounds and everything, it could spread in a nice general way and stuff. So it's like some things are just like, oh, it's not that good where it's like I can hear a pin fly across the room, but it might be good to where the whole right side just has this picks up those little notes a little bit harder or like those screeches a little bit harder and stuff. You're just kind of like, mm, might have to open the door back up. It's just like it's a different experience, and it's nice when you can kind of set like the whole direction and everything to look a little bit different. What's
Yeah.
going on with your camera, man?
I don't know. I'm trying to fix it, but it's just getting brighter and worse.
We're all talking about turning on the lights, and now your whole look like your whole room lit up after
Dude, bro,
that.
I look so bright on there compared to in real life. Talking about it just got me all scared.
I'll tell you what. That's why I got that little pumpkin in the back, and had that little light there, so like I know like there's a way out. But I know that. So that's when I first started, and I think in between that is when I played Silent Hill 2. Because that was another game. I think most of my horror games I've been introduced because of other people. So Patrick was more Resident Evil when it comes to Resident Evil 3 and stuff. I don't really count like the horror games like in the arcade because it's like, oh, they're nice, but they're just shooters. Like they just pop, 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 pop. That's all you really care about.
Yeah.
But I know Mike, when I replayed Silent Hill with him, that was a different experience. That was like more later high school and stuff like that, where he was playing it again. And when you kind of look at an old game and re-experience it, and it still kind of gives you some vibes and stuff, was is kind of like a good sign of like, hey, this game knew what it was doing back in the day. Because this, like, a lot of that stuff still kind of happens, or you can still experience it today the same way, and you're like, oh well, yeah, that's kind of, I remember this is bringing back memories kind of thing.
Yeah.
But pretty much all like the ones that I probably enjoyed is because other people played it and it was like, oh, you got to try it out too and stuff. Like for me, like I know I have Outlast, but I haven't really played it. It was like, I mean, I'm okay with it, but like horror is not my like favorite genre, so I don't chase it. It's more of like, oh, like what else are people doing with it, and maybe I might get into it, maybe I might jump into it.
My biggest problem that I've had with horror games is like they're some of my favorite things to do and play, but for some reason, like well, what ends up happening is every time I want to play like a horror game, somebody wants to watch me play or be there when I play, and so I'll start the game and like I have that person with me and stuff like that. And then every time I stop playing it, it's like okay, well I'm not gonna play it until we get together again and play it. That way we could keep playing it together because we want to experience it. And so I never end up finishing the games. Like I'm currently doing that right now
You fall
with
into
my
the trap.
with my partner for the quarry. Like we're playing that one, but that one the only thing that sucks is like they did the weird thing where it's like you have your because I bought it on sale for Xbox because she has my old Xbox at her house and then I have mine here. So I was like, I'll buy an Xbox. You know what I mean? I could just sync it through my account and we could just go back. If I'm at your house, we could play it there. If we were over here, we could play it here. And it's one of those ones that has those weird. It's one of those ones where it has those weird like. I bought it on sale for the Xbox One edition, and I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. And so then like, I bought the upgrade later on. You know what I mean? Because like I got on the sale, then with the upgrade, it was still only like $60 total. So like I pretty much just paid for a regular game, but within like a span of 2 weeks, so not a big deal. And so we started it here at my house on the upgraded version, and then like a week later we were at her house and we decided to play it again. Like you know, so you can continue from the game, and I guess it didn't save it because it's on the Xbox One version, so we had to start all over again. And so I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, like next time we'll just play the Xbox One version if we do it at my house. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So, but that game's been pretty fun so far. We haven't gotten into any of the serious spooky parts, but playing it over again is pretty cool because like the Quarry is one of those games where it's kind of like a horror movie, a simulation in the sense where like you play as certain characters, you get to make decisions of what to do and stuff like that. And depending on the decision you make, it changes the path you do and stuff like that. And so like it was kind of cool replaying it a little bit again because like I played the beginning girl the first time, and then I decided like at one point you get into the forest and you start walking so far, and I was like, nope, I'm not doing this movie trope. I'm walking back. Like I'm getting too far away from the car already. Let's walk back, right? You know, you hear something spooky happens. It's like, all right, come back. And then when we played it again, this time Miranda had it and everything, and she was like, okay, and like the same part happens, and she's like, I'm gonna keep going. And like at both these points when we did it, it like does a whole thing where it says like path was chosen. And so when she chose that path, it like became like darker and spookier. And I was like, no, it's like you fell into the horror movie trope. You're not supposed to keep going. She's like, it's okay, I can do it because it's a game, so I just want to experience it. I was like, in real life, I'd never do this, and I'm like, we'll see.
It's like, don't be lying.
Right?
Oh man, I remember when we were talking about the indie games and stuff on our indie game episode. We talked about how like horror games kind of helped, like, or indie games really kind of helped like the horror genre a little bit because they kind of brought in, those type of games like Five Nights at Freddy's, and I think Outlast is one of the. I can't tell if Outlast is a an indie game or a AAA game. I never really understand where that kind of lies in.
Indie
But
for sure.
but for sure, it was just like, like we talked about how it kind of really say it kind of really brought it back up and stuff. And, like I kind of think about it now, it's all like, yeah, when it comes to still like a lot of like the recent ones are games that everybody's kind of played, like the one where one player is the killer and like the other ones are like the people trying to run away from the killer and stuff. It's just like that's a fun game, it's fun to watch people play and stuff too. But it's just something that's like, oh yeah, it's I'm not sure if a AAA company would have actually betted on a project like that working and stuff. what do you still
Yeah.
feel about it? Wow, there's a lot of stuff happening outside. It's all like all this thunder and all this other stuff is all coming up right now, man. It was like, well, it's getting sounds like it's getting closer, but
Repeat
it's
that
like,
question again. As you said, it had that noise was happening.
yeah. So how do how to rephrase it? Um, man, I was like, I'm kind of think I kind of think I'm asking you the same question I did before. Was what do you think about like games like those where it's like, do you really think like a AAA company would have actually brought those kind of games out? Like if you know how would I say it?
I would say yeah, in a sense, because like the Quarry is it's a game where like the people who have made it and stuff like that, they when they got to this game, it was actually 2K who produced it. I think it is. And stuff like that, like they paid the money behind it to produce it and give it like high quality stuff and everything like that,
So
because they
they're
had
the
a
publisher.
publisher. Yes, the
Yeah,
publisher. They're the publisher for it because they it was the same people who originally did Until Dawn, which was that PS4 exclusive game.
yeah.
And so from the success of Until Dawn, how well it did, because it was one of those games that people didn't think was gonna do too well. You know what I mean? Because like, oh, we don't know who this team is, but it's a PlayStation exclusive. It looks fun, but we'll see what happens.
Uh-huh.
And then that went well. And then after that, they created like a mini series of games, and it's called Madam Something. And those were like hit and miss. Like one episode or one series of the game would be good, the other ones would be okay. And then when they came out the Quarry, it was like, okay, it's published by 2K, and I was like, oh, that's pretty big. And then looking forward now too, you see what's it called? The remake for Silent Hill 2 is being done by a Blooper team, which they started off with Layers of Fear, and that's one game I have played because it was Layers of Fear came out after PT. When PT was
Hmm.
like, I was obsessed about it, and then it went down the poop hole because of the whole Konami situation. Blooper team created Layers of Fear and kind of like did a copycat slash homage to PT, but in their own spin to it.
Yeah.
And I remember playing that game, and that was fun to play. And you could tell it was like buggy and things like that, and stuff like that. And then they came out with the Medium, which came out, was it this year or last year already? I don't even remember. But the Medium came out and stuff like that, and that was exclusive for Xbox at the time. And then now they're in charge of doing the Silent Hill 2 remake. And so it's like if you have the right track record, I guess you can say like people like AAA's are starting to back it up and actually put them out there.
I guess it's like when you're talking about the people who've been doing it here and there, and I think failure is just another step to success. Like I think
Hmm.
it's a little bit easier to kind of have something like that because it's 2K that's being the publisher, like helping kind of put the money behind it, but still not them developing it. It was just someone else. Like it was just like, hey, I think we have enough confidence in you to kind of help your idea come out because you've been able to do it without our help, kind of thing.
Right.
So I guess for me, as far as like this AAA, like actual companies doing it, like if EA and 2K were to do it themselves, like I'm not sure they would have made the same bet. It was just all like, hey, we have a game design to doc. I think we can ameliorate this out. I think we can really kind of bring people into it, but then they'd probably stop by like, oh, well, look at this data, look at this, the trends for this kind of thing is not really up. At best, we could probably see us getting this and many people to actually take a chance on it. I feel like it'd be like dead in the water for a lot of stuff. But like like you said, like there was a lot more, hey, we know who these people are. People know who these people are. And so it's a
Yeah.
really good um case study, be like, hey, from the people who did blah 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 comes blah blah blah. I think that works out really well to kind of curve the skeptics of the idea, right? PT was a crazy game though. Like PT was a really nice demo. You wanted something that you really didn't want to play with headphones and stuff like that. PT was kind of one of those things. And
Yeah.
I was kind of sad about everything that happened with it, but it was just like I still don't know what happened with all that. Do you remember?
It was a falling out between Konami and Kojima, because Konami wanted to like I guess kind of like restrict a lot of things that he wanted to do, and didn't want to back him up with like I guess I think money might have been the issue in a sense
Mhm.
of like how big he wanted to do it and stuff like that. And so Kojima just kind of went like, I'm gonna go ahead and like just leave Konami at this point because he was also doing the Metal Gear series and like he didn't like the way they wanted to control it and monopolize all that stuff so they can make money off of it. And so he dipped out, and that's what broke it off after that point.
Oh, okay, that makes a little bit more sense because I forgot when the whole Konami Kojima thing kind of happened and stuff. But it was always sad when I kind of see that stuff happen like that because a lot of times that also kind of spells out like your favorite series is probably not going to see anything good in the light of day for a long time. Like at best, he can make spiritual successes for it, but
Yeah,
stuff like Metal Gear and all that, and it's like, yeah, it's that's dead. Well, I hope y'all had a good time. You know, hope y'all were there for the ride.
yeah. At this point, you could tell he's very much more into doing like new innovative things and different stuff. Like Death Stranding was definitely a game that you could tell he wanted to do, and no one was gonna really back him hard in doing it, some of that. Other than the fact that
Mhm.
it's like it's Kojima, so like once he made his own company and stuff like that, Sony's like, yeah, we'll back you up on this, and the success rate of that was even like very mid in the sense where it's like it did well, not great,
Yeah,
but
it took a
you could tell
lot of
he's
people to try to understand that game.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it was very like love or hate received and stuff like that. Where it's like some people loved it, and some people were like, "Oh, this is really boring. All I'm doing is walking around."
yeah. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about the Death Stranding. Like it was just kind of the stuff behind it. I think when people got a chance to play the game at a cheaper price, I think that's when it started getting more of a favorable review. Because yeah, it was just really hard. It was a really hard sell for $60. So when you look at the promotional stuff and everything about it, and you had no idea what this was all about. You had no idea what the game was about. You had no idea what you were gonna do. Why is there a baby involved? Like it was just like there. He likes getting people to question stuff a lot and try to use that feeling of like I just don't know to kind of really drum up excitement for his games and stuff. And he's still doing it for a lot of the projects that he's really a part of and stuff.
Oh yeah,
And it's weird when you saw like, oh, I'm these people didn't want to back, Kojima on a project. That's like a weird phrase. Is all like, well, why not? He's more of a veteran than most people get in like this space and stuff. But I've also seen stuff where it's all like, yeah, he could be a little out there. I can see where people
oh,
are like, hey, we kind of need to kind of come back to reality and need you be here with us for a little bit so that way we can have a conversation because I'm not sure what you're
yeah,
trying to do over there, but it's scaring everybody else here. So those are one of the things that I guess you could say that when you have someone like that behind a project, then you can kind of tell that it would do well and stuff like that. Um, it's a little bit harder when you're not, literally one of the gods of gaming to try
yeah,
and bring out like a project like that. Because yeah, PT for what it was, like if you actually played it all through, you saw some crazy stuff, and you're all like, wow, this was like a really great introduction to Resident Evil or something like that. I forgot what was the purpose of PT at the time, but for the demo that it was, like it had every element of a game design that you really needed
yeah,
to try and show something off. And I think now, like the big change was like Resident Evil now of like them going like, hey, I think we were too actiony for a long time. I think we were really too actiony. We got to try to find some way to bring the horror back as a component to Resident Evil. Because yeah, like I think five was like that too. It was like, oh, you and another person is like bright out. There's not really like a time where you're really scared. You're a big guy with a lot of guns, and it's time to go take out some bad people. That's kind of how it was and stuff. Really actiony, really like kind of down there. And so I think what I think we're at 7 and 8 now for the last two
yeah,
entries and stuff. I think that pivot to try to go back wasn't even needed pivot for that franchise.
yeah. They did a really good job with that game and that series in general. From doing the remakes and stuff like that, and that new engine and everything just looked freaking awesome and amazing. And they cleaned it up really well. And then 7, I haven't played 8 yet, but 7 was really fun to play and stuff like that. I enjoyed the first person perspective out of it. It made it feel a lot more spooky and stuff like that, and have like a
Mhm.
really fun time for me. Um, and it just gave like a different vibe to it and stuff like that. I know 8 kind of goes out there from what I've seen and heard and stuff like that. And I want to try it out because that sounds like my jam right there. Like it sounds like some type of like kind of can be like a cheesy horror movie thing, and I'm all about that stuff.
Yeah, the B-rate horror movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, you know what's another game that wasn't necessarily really a scary game, but it would give me a little bit of like the vibes of that because I would just stay up late playing it on the weekends and stuff like that. And I know it's one of like our favorites in general. It's Shadow Hearts.
Oh, Shadow Hearts.
Yeah,
I will say Shadow Hearts 1, especially
yeah,
some of the earlier levels, like the one town that you had to go to. It was like a
yeah,
ghost town, and like everything about this place was freaky, and you couldn't wait to leave. Like when you left that area, you were like, "Oh, thank God, I don't have to do this no more," because this was something I did not want to be a part of anymore. It
yeah,
was definitely one of those more scarier things. And like, oh Jesus, though. But it's like I remember that level. Like yeah, it was one of those I played at night. It was the middle of the
yeah.
night playing it and stuff like that. I really did like Shadow Hearts. It was a really good game.
It was a
But
Saturday night. You had nothing else to do, so you're just gonna stay up and play it, and then you just kind of start getting creeped out.
but that level was probably the one thing I remember out in that entire game was that one level. You know,
Me
it was
too.
just like, oh Jesus Christ! Like the things you were fighting and all that. And it's weird because it's turn based. It's not like you actually were doing anything else, but it was just even like the enemies and stuff just looked really grotesque and weird, and a lot of stuff that you had to do was like, oh Jesus Christ! Like, what kind of game am I? What is this? Like, it was just so like a different pivot compared to everything else before it. So definitely that was a good one. But I guess that brings another question I have for you, because you kind of brought it up slightly at the end of your last point. Do you like horror games better as a first person experience or a third person experience?
It's gonna be a cop out, but it depends on the game, honestly. Because like there are some games where I've played first person and it doesn't really vibe with me and stuff like that for the feel of it and stuff like that. Like I think Amnesia is one of those games where it's like
Mhm.
very kind of spooky game and you're in first person and stuff like that. And I get where they're going because it was similar to like trying to take after Outlast and stuff like that. It'd be similar in that type of horror genre and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it didn't work for me in the sense of being first person and stuff like that. And I enjoy I enjoy third person more often because if the person who's making the game right can do really awesome things with the third person aspect and stuff like that. Like in the core and stuff like that, it's in third person for that, and like that spooky part that we got to in the forest is one of those things where like you're in third person and like it's just a typical horror movie shot where like your characters you're walking your character this way and all of a sudden just something passes in the background in the camera view and you're like oh shoot like because you're playing the game and you see it happen on screen and the person you're pressing control doesn't see it happen, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you know there's something behind them but someone else does, and when it's first person you have to then hope that the audio sound stuff that will be good enough to capture that for you. And if you don't have the headsets done correctly or the right setup for your speakers, then it just doesn't give you as much of a spook and stuff like that. I think first persons definitely work better for just like your typical jump scare things. What
You
about you?
know what? I agree with that. I think that's a really good assessment because yeah, for me, for most games, third person is kind of where I like to go. Even like some shooters today, even though it's probably not the best way to play it, especially if you're a PC player. But I've always enjoyed a third person game. I think even like it pretty off topic. That's kind of why I think I really like how like Fortnite's kind of set up because I it's like one of those things where like it's nice to see like your characters, nice to see the things happening around it a little bit easier and stuff. Like I think that's a good point to me, like when it comes to games itself. But when it comes to horror games, I can see why the other one is probably more preferred for some because like yeah, the first person, the whole point is to try and get you as much into the game as possible. Try to get you as much into like the whole like I said, it's just those layers of experience that you're trying to build to try and really sell like this as a horror game. And it's really hard when like you as the person pretty much can see everything. It's like nothing can really surprise you and stuff. But I mean, it's just like you said, like foreshadowing is just a good thing that you have to learn how to kind of work in when you're trying to create it like a experience or something coming up. But like Amnesia, yeah, Amnesia I heard was kind of kiddish in that aspect of like, yeah, like it's trying to do the stuff, but like at best you do what you need to do and you just run out of dodge. It's not really the same. And Outlast was kind of something like that, similar, but Outlast was able to kind of build on top of it, like other things.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, like I can see where it's like, yeah, it really just depends. It's like if you go third person, then there's other elements that you have to really pay attention to that you really have to sell. And if you're first person, it's like it may make some stuff easier, but you still have to find ways to build that experience and stuff. I think audio you have to do well no matter which one you go to, because that is what really gets you in. An
Yeah.
ambient song to anything can make anything kind of sound. I mean, what was it when we're looking at like song for here? Like we can go. Was it? Let's say like driving night. I could play that right now. Now the podcast is a little smooth, and now we it feels like it immediately brought the tempo down.
Right.
With this kind of song, and then we kind of go something with a little bit more higher BPM. Not too much, but it kind of just gives you a different feeling and stuff. And so music is just very important on top of the sound design at all, because it's the only thing that really sets the stage without like really having to sell it to a person. Like this is what it's going to be about, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, like a perfect like first person game that did that really really well was Alien Isolation, where like you're in first person mode and like the alien is in the ship and stuff like that, and you have to try and survive and escape the ship and stuff like that. Like that was fully based on just like jump scares and sound design and stuff like that, because you would go in and even if you didn't have the greatest speakers, it just worked correctly, because like you'd be walking and you just hear a little like running through the vents and you're like, oh no, and then you have your little radar to detect where the alien is and stuff like that, and you're like, oh shoot, it popped up on the radar over here, so you have to run and hide in this area, and then the alien would come up towards like the area you're in, sometimes you can see them and stuff like that, and it like gets you that real creepy, right? Like oh dude, don't find me, don't find me, don't find me. Like you're playing the game, you're outside of the game, and you're holding your breath, being like, they can't hear me, they can't. It's like, oh wait, I gotta breathe. I'm playing a game. You know what I mean? It did a really good job like that. And then like for third person, and which is kind of another way to work some of that, because it's a multiplayer game, but it works really well, is Dead by Daylight. Like that's a fun one because it's in third person, and even though it's multiplayer and stuff like that, you still get those like scary vibes and that, because you're trying to like, oh shoot, your partner got freaking stuck over here, and you're trying to help them out, and all of a sudden that player comes behind you, and that whatever villain they are and stuff like that, you're like, oh no, and like the music kicks up, the heart starts beating, so you have to try and run away. You know what I mean? And it just works so well.
That was the game I was talking about earlier, that by Daylight, because that was like when that first came out, like the videos on it were just pretty funny, especially because it's just like the guy just kind of grabs you, just hook. But yeah, it's like, but like trying to run away, you're actually able to go through the window, and he's like, damn, I gotta go around, and you just pop up on the other side of the window and stuff like that. That was a good game, but that like it builds up that immersion, because you're having to play the guy who needs to run. You can't do anything else. Like you have to get away. You got to get all the stuff. You got to try, survive by whatever. And it is fun. Like it's one of those that it can kind of enhance a little bit of the spookiness and stuff about it, but it is generally like a really fun game, but also has that element. So I think that game was actually pretty fun. Did you ever play Slender Man?
I did. I played it, and I even watched the videos afterwards about it.
Yeah, like Slender Man could be a good rabbit hole to kind of go into, but I mean that was a Unity game that I felt generally was really well done. Is probably a stretch, but it was a very simple thing of kind of like putting these stuff together. Got the guys following you, but it's more the closer you are to like getting all the pieces, the more aggressive he gets, and when the music goes up and stuff like that, and stuff starts getting real and stuff, and it kind of really had a good way of kind of building those kind of game components and stuff, and then it really got into some 3 a.m. stuff afterward.
Yeah,
It's like the lore behind it. I think didn't they do like a movie or something? Was
it
a
started
certain
off
event?
as like small videos on YouTube that these people started creating, and
Yeah,
like if you watch them, it like they're really really good at first, and then you could tell they kind of run out of ideas, and it just gets like, okay, like you lost me, like
yeah,
you lost me. This isn't as fun as it used to be, and but it's understandable, man. It's a bunch of people that got together and made it, and they had a good idea, and they did a good job going through it, and then they had the hype going behind them and the stuff backing them to do it, so they kept making it, and it just kind of went a little too far. But
yeah.
that, I mean, that's kind of a horror thing in general for the most part. Like the one thing I always tell my girlfriend and stuff like that is like when it comes to horror movies, like every time the one thing I hate the most about horror movies and stuff like that is like the reviews on them because they're like, oh, like this part was great, but then the ending was terrible. And 9, 10 out of 10, most horror movies don't know how to end correctly, and it's because it's kind of hard. Like, how do you end a horror movie? You know what I mean? Because like you want to end it on a high note, and that's either scaring the audience or like you ending the story in general. And it's really hard to kind of have them both mash up and be good.
True, because I think with the hardest thing about horror movies, and I want to say much about horror games because I think games, the way that they tell story and experiences, kind of works out because it feels like you're the one who's making a lot of those decisions, even though the control's not really yours. It's harder
Hmm.
to watch somebody make decisions you know are wrong, and it's
Yeah,
like you could have done literally anything else.
yeah,
And how like you did the thing that was guaranteed going to kill you, or like, hey, isn't this kind of, why are we here, can we just leave? I think we can just leave. Nobody is even at the front door.
yep,
It's one of those things where it's all like, oh, someone got killed because they got killed in their own house, and you find out they didn't even lock the doors. They get, it's like, well, of course, man, you security, man, I don't know what else to tell you, but it's like, it's just one of those things where you're just like, yeah, like, yeah, I just remember, like, you watching like what was it? Something like the older Halloween. Freddy Krueger is
hmm,
probably like one of the ones I was like, oh, I mean, that ain't much you can really do if dying means like, oh, go to sleep and there you go, you're dead. So that's probably a little bit more forgivable. But what's the one that's scary movies like the Scream? There we go. Like Scream, you saw a lot of that where it was just kind of like, I see where this is going, and I also see where it's like you didn't really need to do what you needed to do, but you still did it. I don't know what to say about it.
yeah. I would really suggest if you get a chance to either try out Until Dawn or The Quarry, and try it out with Laura, because like especially like if you're not the biggest fan of horror movies because you see people making those dumb decisions.
You're
This
asking a
this,
lot,
this
sure. You're asking a lot.
it's it's not too much because like they're kind of like walking sim games in a sense, so you're not really doing a ton of like hardcore gameplay. It's
Yeah,
a lot more cinematics and stuff like that. So it's kind of like watching a horror movie, but you actually get to make the decisions to be like, I'm not gonna do that dumb thing over here. I'm gonna do this. You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
I know if I do this, then I'm gonna be probably safer later on. And then the game does a really good job on twisting it here and there and stuff like that, depending on your decisions.
Hmm. I probably would because more games that kind of work through a story. Like I really did like the Walking Dead episodes. Like as
Yeah,
much as they weren't maybe like set to be scary, a lot of decision making stuff that you had to do, I thought was really nice. Like I really enjoyed going from episode to episode to episode, and then how it ended was like something that I really was like, oh, this sucks.
yeah,
It's all like, oh, this super sucks. But it was something that I really did appreciate, kind of walking through the story stuff or whatever. And I think I did do that for like episodes 1 and 2 with Laura. Because like you said, it's one of those things where it's all like you want to save the experience with the person that you're with, because y'all started it together, you want to finish it together. But sometimes life doesn't work that way, and it's all like, oh, we're gonna go do this, we're gonna do that, and then a week, two pass by and stuff. You just kind of forget to go back, and you're like, I still can't start it yet until like she gets back. So it just kind of dies on the wayside, kind of thing. But I think if the core is like that, then I probably would give it a chance just to see it. Because, like I said, with a lot of games that I'm playing right now, like I'm playing Gotham Knights right now, um, while I'm trying to like get ready for other stuff. So it's really hard to kind of like insert it at the moment, but I think it would be still pretty nice.
yeah. It might be a side note, but how are you liking Gotham Knights? Because I know it hasn't been reviewed very, very well.
So I will say this: it's a back and forth. If you play the old Arkham series of like Batman Arkham City, Arkham Knight, Arkham Asylum, Arkham Origins, if you've played those games and you're expecting this to be similar, there's a lot more to be disappointed about than be okay with it. Um those games it's and this is I guess this is where it gets really hard because when the whole game is about how to be like a badass Batman, there's a lot of room to play around with because Batman's whole basically story and everything that happens in the Batman series can go like a lot of different directions. And so almost all of his villains are very well known, iconic. Almost all the people he deals with as far as anti-heroes are very iconic and stuff. And so when you have a game where like all those are kind of being brought in, like it's a great experience because like I got Mr. Freeze here, I got Penguin here, I got the Joker there, I got the
Yeah,
Scarecrow, I got to do all this kind of stuff. It ends up being like a big thing because then you're like this one guy who has to handle it all. And now you're kind of in a position where it's like, oh, I have semi control of four people. You don't really have control over them, but you can switch between one or the other. And you're kind of it feels like you're trying to do the job that Batman did, but obviously not with everything that Batman was to do it. And so it's a lot of the things like one thing that I don't really like about it is um how would I say it? I don't like the whole like you do like a thing and then you go back to like the watchtower in a way and then kind of like stops the night and then like you go to the next night. I didn't really like that mechanic. I don't like the mechanic of like oh you have to stop people in order to kind of get clues for the next thing, but really just hey, I'm just holding somebody, interrogating them, get some points, and then something happens the next time I go out the next time. It's not like you're in Gotham City and you're having to go back and forth between Gotham City because you got a clue here and you need to go over there kind of thing. It's not really working in that kind of flow. And when you have four characters that you can actually buff up, it's really hard. Like it's like because you're like, oh, I want Nightwing to look cool, but then I want to try out Batgirl, or like I gotta try a Red Hood, and then you're like, oh, now you're bouncing between these characters, but you're not really progressing in a way that's making those characters better at the time. So it's like, oh, well, now that I stopped being Robin, I got to go to here. Do I need to go buy more stuff? Do I have enough resources for like his outfit? Blah blah blah. Like it's kind of like you're kind of having to balance four characters in an RPG, but you're only able to play one at a time. So like they
gotcha.
all don't go out and like on a mission. You're the one guy, and you're basically experiencing that one guy's story and all the dialogue. If he was the one that gone out, and if you switch, it's kind of like the same thing, except the game's pretty good at recognizing that you are that person or you are that guy or whatever. So I like that aspect, but outside of that, the problem really comes down to the gameplay. It's a lot more cleaner. It's a lot more slim compared to like Batman. Like there's not you can do stealth, but it's not such a big component of it. They just say, hey, you get extra points if you stealth it, kind of thing. But like Batman had
Okay,
a good job of hanging people, getting to the next area, and the levels were built for it. And this one, I literally got around everybody by literally just going left and just said, I'll just walk right out. And then it was like level cleared. And it was like, okay. Like it wasn't even that. It was just all like
you're just like
these people are trying to get after you.
done.
And it's like, good luck. Like I'm Nightwing. I could just literally jump. Like you get the grappling hook pretty early, and you can literally Spider-Man throughout Gotham City. The bike is just optional at this point. So like when it's like, oh, you got to escape, you got to escape, and you know all these people are, have to fight all these people, or jump, walk, and that was it. That was like the end of the level, and it was like, okay, that wasn't even 30 seconds.
Dang.
It's like it looked like playing the game was optional at that point. But yeah, there's something that's fine. I do like some other things, and I do love like when you buy gear, you actually changing the entire outfit. Because I am not a fan of
Nice.
the original outfits as they are right now.
Oh
But
yeah.
like you can get some boss outfits for them. So I was like, okay, I like that. But that's where it is. I'm trying to play into it more. But there are some Batman Arkham stuff that I feel like I am missing, especially fighting different enemies and stuff.
Gotcha. You're playing on PlayStation?
Xbox.
Oh, okay.
I did get the collector's edition
Oh,
for that
nice.
one. So, but I was able to get it for the Xbox. I couldn't get it for PlayStation. Then when the game came out, it was available for PlayStation everywhere. But then I was like, I'll get it for Xbox. Like I don't have to delete anything off my hard drive because I still got a good hard drive on there. Like I don't have to like do all this other stuff. And I just want to make sure I got all the pre-order stuff. I didn't really want to jump
Yeah.
at that point because it was already coming late. And then it was like, hey, good news. It's coming a little bit earlier on Monday. And it's like, yeah, but I was supposed to get it Friday. And it's like, so I haven't been able to play it for the entire weekend and the time where I couldn't go anywhere for the entire weekend.
Oh
You
no.
ruined it. It's just it was nice, but it was just it could have been a little bit better. It's
I know it's been like a quote unquote like controversy thing in a sense, but like how's it been playing running on 30 frames per second on console? Since I know it's locked at that point.
it's locked for everywhere. You
Well, because you
can't
can do 60
really.
on PC, right? Well, you can do up to 60 on PC, but it's not
So
optimized or whatever.
I'm not sure if you've seen it, but some ordinary gamer did a really good video on it. And the biggest problem with the game, and you can tell really off the bat, the game is not optimized. The
Right.
game is not utilizing a lot. Even if I were to buy it for the PC, like I'm not going to see the 4K goodness as I'm expecting it's supposed to be, compared to like if you were literally to play the Batman games now, like
Yeah.
refreshed, they look so much better.
Yeah.
Like, and it's ridiculous. It shouldn't even be possible, but it does. Like, you could tell like there's some cases where it's like it's definitely better if I did it this way. It's definitely better if I did it that way. Um, I talked to you about it before. I don't necessarily care about the 30 frames or 60 frames per second. Like, I think it does look nice in some aspects, but it's not hurting me. Like, I'm not going to throw away the entire game because it doesn't do it. Because I think
Yeah, for sure.
that's weird. Like no, that's not what the game's about. But I will say that because it's not optimized, I do understand like the city is not as full. There's not a lot of people out when it's like Gotham City. Like you're literally going through all of Gotham City and it looks like at max 100 people live there. And so you do see that like when you play Spider-Man, like how many people are scattered around New York City.
Right.
It is a really big difference. Um and I just felt like they try to keep a lot of the core stuff in the game to like a bare minimum. Like, hey, I wanna, we gotta fight people. Yeah, we gotta make sure we fight people. And then we have to do missions. Gotta add the missions there. Enemies. Gotta add some enemies in there. What else does a Batman game have? Gadgets. All right. We gotta, we gotta get guns. We got to get staffs. And it's like, what about all like utility belt stuff? No, we're not Batman. I know Robin has a utility belt, but smoke bombs as best as you're gonna do right now. And it's like we got to slim this down. We got to make sure it works. And so you're just all like, oh, they kind of step back a lot. If when you think about it, they kind of really did step
Gotcha.
back a lot. But yeah, that's kind of like I can't really give a real review on it because at first I was like, oh, okay, my Simon's probably dead a little bit at the very beginning, but voice acting, being able to kind of really get into a lot of the stuff, and just like, hey, I'm playing a Batman game or like a Batman like game, kind of really helps kind of get into the spirit of the game a little bit better. So like at right now, it's like a 6. That's
Okay.
the best way to say it because it's not an all right terrible game. You can look at it as a technical aspect and be like, okay, I can see where it's not good, but not a lot of people play games for a technical aspect. They play games because they're fun.
Yeah,
So
I feel you.
that's what I want to like judge it at the end of the day. Is this game actually fun?
For sure. It looks fun, man.
But are you gonna play it at all? Are you gonna jump into it?
I want to, but I think it's probably one of those games that I'd rather wait to go on sale and then I'll get it, not spend the full upfront money for it at this point.
Good. I probably would tell you if you're not too big on the other stuff, because I was kind of back and forth about the collector's edition, because I was like, I really want to spend this money because it's not much that really comes into the collector's edition. So like after you take out an $80 game, because basically they just give you the deluxe edition with everything. Once you take out
Right.
the $80 game, you're just kind of like, is the rest $220 worth? And it really makes it a hard, after like having like the other ones collector's edition, it makes a hard argument for it, because it's like I really like how that statue looks. It's just not detailed and heavy like the Horizon one I got earlier in the year. You know,
Right.
it's not, you could tell when like something's not the same quality. But I was like, I'll keep it. I've been waiting for it, so it just kind of like I folded. Like I'm like, what was the last game that I bought? I just bought Pokemon Diamond just because it was $30. I didn't like, my mind wasn't I was gonna play it right now. I was just like, oh, it's on sale. So I don't really haven't been buying a lot of games as much because of like Game Pass and all that. But it's like, oh yeah, I could splurge a little bit on it because my next game is probably gonna be Pokemon Scarlet, which is probably just be $60. So
What about God of War?
I'm back and forth.
Are you really?
Because the first God of War was great. Like as far as like if you were ever a God of War fan, the remake or redone of God of War was fantastic. Laura loved it. She wanted to kind of get back into it because there was just a lot about it that was really good, even for like somebody who's just watching it from the side. And so I was like, yeah, I'll think about Ragnarok. I wasn't just really hard on it, and I miss getting the collectors for that. But I mean, I might get it, but it might not be right now. Just because I don't think I'll, by the time it comes out, some of the other stuff will kind of be in the way, so I won't be able to play it as much. So
Gotcha.
it's like a timing thing at this point.
I feel you. No, yeah, definitely my next purchase is gonna be Pokemon, and then that one I need to buy the freaking the double pack. That way, Demon can get the other one.
But, I was doing something here. I don't know, but that's kind of what's coming out. I know a lot of games came out this month, but not a whole lot that I remember. I think October and November is going to be a pretty big month for a lot of stuff. No.
Yeah. But you have your big hitters too. Like I know Call of Duty just came out, I believe, the campaign
Yeah.
wise and stuff. And
What other horror games came out? Do you know if the new horror game came out this month or even September?
No, nothing this month or September. I don't think we had any really big releases for horror games. Yeah. I would say, what would you categorize a game like Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood?
I give them horror because of the zombie thing, but they kind of have that arcade feel too.
Yeah.
Like it's like arcade console fun.
Like House of the Dead style or something like that.
Yeah, because like when I played it with when I played it with Mike and stuff, it was just like, here, everybody get a controller, let's start shooting things. Like it wasn't any different from like playing, well, it was in a sense, but like as far as like the feel wasn't too much different compared to like how would I say Black Ops Zombie. Like, that one I felt like it had a little bit more, like you had to kind of be a little bit more wary and stuff. It's like, oh, we gotta make sure we buy the right things, we gotta make sure we do the things. Like it was a really good mechanic to it, to the point where they put a lot more effort into it every time they updated it. And I know Patrick was like in love with it. But it's just that. It's just like, hey, it's horde killing, get to the end, shoot everything in the way, don't let me down, or I'll come back to haunt you, kind of thing. It's just, it's all that. Like it's fun, but it doesn't have the elements of a horror game. So it's just not like, oh, we're scared because it's like all these big ugly monsters coming out of nowhere. No, it's just like it's like the American style of it. It's like yeah, boy, you better get out the way, or else I'm gonna have to go through you now. It's like, it's like one of those. It's like, yeah, it's like, don't. Yeah, I get that shotgun, and you don't want me to have to get that double barrel. I'll get you.
I'll load on you.
So it's just one of those things where it's just like, yeah, it's meant for fun. And when
Yeah,
you do normally do multiplayer games like that, they're meant for fun. How much fun can we get people to have with each other? Great Xbox game.
that reminds me of because it was the same time as that in 360 era. Alan Wake was a great horror game. I don't know if you ever played that one.
I haven't, but I've been so familiar with it. Like, and the fact that it has kind of been around. It's just one of those I haven't played, but I definitely knew about it because it was one of a big title around the time.
Yeah, it was like one of the I think it was a Remedy's one of the bigger like hits and stuff like that at the time. Kind of put them more on the map than people knew before. And they actually came out with like a remastered edition too. I don't know if it was this year or
Mhm.
last year and stuff like that. And I actually want to go back and play that because I really, really enjoyed that game. I played it to the end, beat it, and stuff like that. And I remember I wanted more. And then by the time I found out about the DLC, it was already like way too late. And so I was like, oh, I fell off of it from that point. But I would love to play that remastered version and then play the DLC too because I heard the DLC was really good as well. And then they also just announced too that they're making Alan Wake 2
I mean,
from Remedy. So it'd be good to
I
like play it. It'd be good to play it now within like the year, and then probably the next couple of years, 2 to 3 years, it might come out. At that point,
no, I guess you give me a lot of stuff to add to the list. You know what? I probably have that on Steam.
probably.
I actually recently I've been kind of really into getting a Steam Deck to try and move all because if it's on the computer, I have a hard time playing a lot of games on the computer because this computer is everything for me. It's the editing workstation, it's the YouTuber, it's the other stuff. Like I'm doing so much on this computer that even the games on top, it's just a stack of everything. Like I think I felt like I just need a Steam machine somewhere else or build a computer and add it to the theater room and just play games in there like that. But I
That'd be
was like,
cool.
I kind of want a Steam Deck. I think a Steam Deck would kind of just solve the issue. I mean, it wouldn't solve as far as like the high fidelity graphics and all the other stuff, but it'll solve the fact that I have 200 or plus games that need some love. That's where I played a lot of the games where I played Among Us with you. That's where I played The Walking Dead, a lot of that. So I'd probably go on there and be like, yeah, Humble Bundle gave me a lot of stuff and it was just pumping out games here and there. So I probably have Alan Wake, and it's just been sitting there, just like
You ever gonna
yeah.
download me?
I probably have it on PlayStation. If I think of going into like all my PlayStation,
Probably.
I don't think I've ever. I only miss like maybe one or two of like PlayStation's like monthly stuff. I know I miss a lot of the Xbox ones. Sometimes the way that they did it, what I just couldn't really jump on and really download it. And then every time when I was like, oh, I really wanted that game, and it would be like the 16th, and I would just barely missed it by a day. And I was like, no, damn it. But actually, you know what? That's one thing I have been liking, like, because the Epic Store, the Epic Library has been like that too, where it's like, hey, we have come out free games. You know what? I can even check. Does
I,
Epic have it?
I actually think they should because I think I got Control from Epic for free, and Control is a Remedy game as well. Because that's what I always wanted to play and stuff like that, and I never got around to purchasing it. And Epic was like, "Oh, we're giving it away for free," and I was like, "Well, accept that. That way, I have it, and someday I'll play it."
Wow, it's free. So I don't have the original, but it's $3.74 right now.
For the remastered or for
Oh, just for Alan Wake, yeah.
nice?
Is that how much is the remaster? Is it going for full price? $16.49. It's on sale as well.
That's really good.
Oh no, okay. Well, I thought I did on it, but it's not gonna break the bank. I'll tell you that much.
Heck yeah. Uh, look at what's it called? The other fun horror game and stuff like that. Talking about Steam Deck stuff, which would probably be one fun to play on your Steam Deck if you haven't played it yet. Is Doki Doki Literature Club.
I'm not touching that game.
Why not?
I'm not touching that game. I played a little bit of it, like and kind of gone through it, but I'm like, I'm not too much in like that. because I know everything now. Like I've known the entire game inside and out
Okay.
because of like the jokes and all that, and like how the players like, oh, it's a good. Let me rephrase that. It's like it's a good experience
There you go.
to kind of go through the game, but the game was made as a joke, but as a horror joke, I guess you could best
Yeah.
say it. So it does pretty good at what it was out to try and do. But it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's pretty funny. Like I enjoyed it, but I think I enjoyed it more people playing it, explaining it, a lot of the crazy game theories, diving into it. There was another game that I just recently knew about that is old. I don't remember. I actually used it for a thumbnail. It was the game of like the obsessive girlfriend that kidnaps you in the Japanese school or whatever. That game was pretty funny because it was just always that Cinderella type of girl that was chasing you with the red eyes and stuff. You're like, oh, this girl really trying to kill me. That was another kind of like anime kind of horror game. Uh, oh, Eternal Darkness on GameCube. Oh yeah, I do remember Eternal Darkness on GameCube. That one is my GameCube didn't get. I already told you how I got my GameCube, so I didn't get a chance of that. But yeah, that was a game that I remember everybody was playing, at least in my
Oh
circle.
yeah. That's like one you had to have played. You had a GameCube and stuff like that, which I never did, so I never got to experience that one.
Sometimes you just get late to the party and you miss all the good stuff, right?
Maybe it's one of those things when I'm done with school in January, I can maybe do an emulator or something and play it there. I mean, you never know.
If you could fight a disc, we could put it on the GameCube. So it's like they still got the GameCube. It's like, but it sounds like a perfect reason to get a Switch too. All of a sudden,
That game's not. Has it ever been ported out to anything else? I think it's like been stuck on the GameCube, right?
I don't know. That's actually a really good question. I can kind of look that up. But actually, nah, GameCube. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
only
See.
GameCube. Super high reviews still, even to this day.
Yeah.
2002, man. That was freshman year, in high school for me. Like Jesus,
Damn.
that's a trip.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, yeah. But that was I remember a lot about it. It's kind of like Alan Wake. Like I knew so much about it. I knew people were playing it. I knew like I saw all the promotional stuff and it's one of those things where it's like you get into a YouTube video and then you start getting into a lot of more rabbit holes into it and stuff. So you're like, oh, it's nice.
Another one for me, it's kind of similar to Eternal Darkness, where I never played it because I just missed out on the moment in time. Is System Shock was one of those games that like I know a lot of people loved and played and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, it was so scary what they did with the game and stuff like that. Because I think that's the game that did the like you were gonna save it, whatever, and it pretended like it was destroying your save file or whatever. And, like the game was glitchy and everything, and like at the time that was something that like people would never thought of and stuff. So people were freaking out, like, "Oh no, it will start over!" And they realized it's like, "Oh, that's actually part of the game." And I was like, "Hey, I wish I would have experienced that. That sounds like a good time."
Oh, I love fourth wall breaking stuff where it's just kind of like it's not a horror game, but Bravely Default did that where like basically the last final boss was all like, yeah, I'm gonna erase this whole thing. It was literally taking you to the menu, taking you to the start to save to delete. Like it was literally going through the entire thing, and then it was like, I don't think so. And then it kind of like just broke out of it, kind of thing. It's like those moments like that in gaming are nice. Like those are kind of fun things because you don't expect it. You're like, what's going on? And everything like nothing makes sense at that moment.
Yeah, like Undertale did that too. When you get to like doing defeating the pacifist mode and stuff like that, it gets to a point where like it makes you seem like the game restarted all over again, but you really didn't. You're actually in this battle, the final boss battle, and stuff like that. And like I finally beat that one this year and stuff like that. So getting to that point was like super fun to experience. And then like my son had already beaten it before, and so once I beat it and everything, I was like, dude. And he's like, oh, I know. And like I think it'd been a couple of years since he had beat it, and so we started talking about it, and he started remembering. He was like, "Oh, he's like, yeah, I remember I was freaking out about that part." I was like, I could imagine, like, I'm a almost 34-year-old man and stuff like that playing this game, and I'm freaking out like, no, wait. It's like imagine like an 11-year-old, 10-year-old playing that game and then having that happen to you. Like, yeah, you're ready to start controlling the TV when you're that age.
No, I think when it came to horror games, they were fun to talk about. I will give it that. Like when everybody got the chance to explain it, even like I said with Five Nights at Freddy's and stuff, we were able to talk about it even after we played the game. It was a great party thing at the time. You
Yeah,
know, it's just a lot of stuff you can remember, just kind of remember and just kind of like bask into it. Um, Same thing with like Left 4 Dead or not Left 4 Dead, The Last of Us. Not really, again, not really a horror game, but there's a lot of like the horror aspects that's in there that was great because it actually led up to it being a better game. Like the first
yeah.
into it, it was like a lot about this game was really nice. I really did kind of like it. It did kind of give you those eerie vibes and stuff like that. Like the game did a pretty good job, even if maybe it wasn't trying to do it. It didn't know how to sell the feeling and stuff like that. And so like a lot of older games, Resident Evil and all that, they've been around for so long and they've ended up being pop culture stuff itself, honestly.
Horror games are fun because like they're really good at doing the same thing that horror movies do, where they're fun to watch or play alone because you get even scarier, but they're also really fun to play or watch with a friend and stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
when I had Silent Hill 2 and I had already beaten it and everything, it was like probably like just it was summer at that point and stuff like that. And I had a friend come over and he stayed the night and he's like, "Oh, let's play a game." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, Silent Hill 2." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Let's play." I was like, "All right, cool, go for it." I was like, "You play." He's like, "Why?" It's because I've already beaten it. Like I've already beaten it. I've gotten all the different endings and stuff like that. He's like, "There's different endings." I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay."
Hmm.
And so like we played it, and for some reason that night it was summer night, but it was kind of windy and stuff like that. And at my parents' house, where my window was at and everything, there was a tree in the back, and you could see it. And so like while we're playing the game, like the TV was facing this way to the window, and we're facing away from the window and stuff like that. And he was really like he would get scared real easily. And so he
Hmm.
started getting really scared because you would have like the shadows of the trees start moving on the wall or something like that off to the side. And so as he's playing this game, I'm just like hanging out with him watching it, and you can tell he's like, "Oh." He's like, "What was that?" It's like it's just a tree, dude. It's okay. Like you haven't even at the scary part in the game yet. You know what I mean? Like you haven't even gotten to some of like the scarier parts. Like you're gonna be okay. And he's like, "Oh," and like hour and a half into him playing that game, he ends up being like, "All right, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore." He's like, you go ahead and play." I was like, "All right, are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll just watch." And so I take over and I start playing it and everything, and I start like enjoying it and getting into it. And then like I could tell like he's like just kind of curled up on the side of my futon, just kind of like watching the game, like all nervous and stuff. And I'm like, "Hey, like, do you want to switch it to something else? Like that way, when we go to bed, it won't be all freaky stuff." He's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, let's switch to something else." So we ended up switching like a multiplayer game or something.
You know, I got to bring that up now because we actually kind of talked about it a little bit. Are horror games something where it's better enjoyed when it's like one person playing and everybody's kind of there, like kind of like backseat driving, or is it more fun when you're playing it as a multiplayer game?
I think for scare factors, like if you really want to be scared, it's better being like a single player player with your friends around. But if you want to just like have something fun to talk about and like just have a good time, I think that's when the multiplayer aspect comes into it. Like I prefer playing Dead by Daylight with friends to that because I'm gonna have a good time and like you're gonna be on comms with each other, like and like your friend's gonna be the killer and you're gonna hear him like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you." Like, "Oh shoot, where are they? Where are they?" It's like because they're adding to like the
Yeah.
horrifying experience talking to you and stuff like that. While as for like the first person one, it's more immersive on my part, where it's like, "All right, I'm playing this, I'm into it." And then you just hear someone else who's like watching you play, and you be like, "Oh, don't open that door! Don't open that door!" It's like I'm gonna open that fucking door now. And you open it, and they're like, "Ah," you know what I mean? Like that's the
Hmm.
way I see it, man. I think I prefer the single player with people watching me and stuff though overall, but that's where the multiplayer for me kind of can become king in a sense.
Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point. I think the multiplayer works the best when you're against your friends. Not a lot of times playing with them. Like obviously you're playing with them and stuff, but when one of your friends is basically
Yeah,
everybody's trying to run away. I think that's just something that ends up bringing like a bigger experience on that. But I guess for me, if I had to die on a hill, I feel like the single player one was the best because just with this conversation alone, I've been able to recall a lot more of those times where
Yeah,
like we had people in the room, someone's all like, "Hey, but don't why would you do that?" And it's like kind of moments and stuff, and then you talk about it, and you end up kind of sometimes even playing the game even longer than what you normally would if you played by yourself. Like if you're by yourself, you have to be like really into it and like I got to get all this and all that. But a lot of times, like I find when it comes to like those type of horror games and stuff, and it's probably why Patrick had me there a lot when he was playing it, was that there's a lot more to talk about because you can talk about a lot of the stuff. You can talk about where to go. You're actually discussing it, but like you're also both kind of getting into like the whole like okay, horror music and stuff like that. Because the thing about a good ambience is like it surrounds you all around.
yeah,
Really get you into the mindset, but it gets everybody in the room into that mindset. Unless you're wearing headphones, which at that point you're just being kind of mean at that, but it's like it is there are ways to really kind of sell it and stuff. And I think first person play sessions work out really well for that.
I
And
think it's also fun. Oh, sorry.
no, I was saying I'm just not the best at like a backseat gamer for other stuff, but I think those are the time that I think I was okay with it. Go ahead.
No, I also remember times of like it's fun like sometimes playing like a single player game with people around you, stuff like that, and you'll like take turns to play it just because you all want to play it together in a sense. And you
Mhm.
always have like that one person who starts to play it, and then they start getting scared of themselves, and they just kind of go like, no, 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 here. And they have to pass the controller because they get freaked out, and it's like it's fun to see it because unfortunately I'm one of those people who like I get scared of stuff like that, but I'm an adrenaline junkie at the same time. So when I get scared, I'm like, ooh, what was that? That was awesome. Like it gets me excited, and it's funny seeing other people. Like my partner's a perfect example of that and stuff like that. Where like we're in a room playing the core and stuff like that. We're hanging out playing it, and then like it has a scary moment happen to her and stuff like that. And she like puts the controller. She's like, oh no, and I'm like, oh, that was great. And everything. Like I'm laughing and everything. She's like, don't laugh at me. I was like, I'm not laughing at you. It's like your reaction is just so different to mine, and it's enjoying to see it that way. So
I think Laura did that to me one time where she basically just abandoned the controller, like, nope. And I was like, oh, just like, no, this is the controller. It's all like, it's fine. It's like, nope, nope, I don't know what to do. Like, because for some people who are not really used to it, it's like a lot of different emotions kind of happen at that one
yeah,
second. And you're just like, nope, nope, done. We're good. I watch you play. You do what you want to do. And, it's just like, I can't. I've seen those happen more than once. It's probably the most funniest thing you'll ever witness. And like you said, it's like you're not really laughing at the person, you're just laughing at like literally the thing that happened. It was just
yeah. Or even like moments where like if you're playing a game because your friend wants to play and you already like know what's gonna happen, and you go, oh here, go ahead and start playing right now. Like, are you sure? Like, yeah, I'm gonna go grab a snack and use the restroom. So you go ahead and start from here, knowing that something that kind of spooky is about to happen. So you
Mhm.
purposely hand it off to them so they can start playing and they get the scared thing. And you're like, yes, got him. It's like it got me too. It's like it's good
Mhm.
to know that they really got scared on that part.
Yeah, that's one of the times where it's good when you're playing a single player game, but you're playing it separately. Is that you're both sparing something on the end, and then you could talk about it a little bit later, like how it actually got you. Um, I don't know. I guess maybe for horror games like single players, probably like I said, if I had to die on a hill, that's probably where I think like it's actually probably the most fun because you remember it the most.
Yeah, like I would love to play Callisto Protocol and Dead Space remake like with my partner with me in the room and stuff like that. Because that seems like a way more fun time than playing. I'll enjoy playing by myself, but it would just be more fun to play that way because you have to get them close, cut off the limbs and everything like that. So it gets really intense.
So you play Dead Space, right?
Yeah, I've beaten the first
That
and second one.
that is a good dark ambience. And the fact that I think you're scared more because you have to kill the enemies in a certain way.
Yeah.
And if you're not really good at aiming, it could be a hard time because they're not giving you a lot of ammo and stuff like that.
No.
So you could go somewhere and it's like everything seems fine. I know it's not fine, but if I gotta play the game though. I gotta keep going. Like because yeah, that game can easily become not fine in a lot of cases. You're just like, oh, I really don't want to do that. Or you just look down a certain angle and you're like, I know something's there. I know that thing's not dead. Do I really want to deal with it? I gotta deal with it. And then
Dude,
you're just like that, expectation just builds up so high. And then
yeah.
sometimes they do a good job of like building it so high, and then like the thing you thought was gonna happen didn't happen. And you're like, oh, okay, that's good. And then something else happens. You're like, oh, I was not ready for that.
It does a really good job too of like using the environment and stuff like that because like there's so much mechanics for like opening certain doors, stuff like that, and they did a really good job on sound design for that game at the time. Where it's like you gotta open this door and you see like the blood and stuff inside the window of an area and stuff like that. You're like, oh, I'm gonna open this door, something's gonna come out of it, and I'm gonna be ready to fight it. So you like do the whole little like slow creep walk up to it, and like you press the button every like step of the way before you have to actually press the button to see how close you can get. You press
Mhm.
it, open it, and you run off. You're like, ah, oh. You're like, oh, oh, that was it. It's just open the door. Oh, damn it, they got me. And you just go and continue on.
Yeah. What game have you played? Because I know I brought up The Last of Us a lot about like it did have like some moments that have some kind of scare to it. What other games have you played that wasn't supposed to be intentionally a scary or horror game, but did a really good job at like actually delivering the experience?
One of them for me is Inside. Inside was one of those games where it's the creators of Limbo, but it's the second one they made.
Oh,
Where that one was one of those ones where like I really enjoyed playing that game, and like it's meant to be kind of like creepy and stuff like that, but it's more of like I guess like an anxious moment and stuff like that. Like oh god, oh god, oh god. Like at one point during the game when you see like the dogs in the background and stuff like that, and you have to like try and go over the fence and back and trick them to get it, so you keep moving forward and stuff like that. Like I remember doing that one like 5, 6, 7 times. And every single time my heart was just racing. And I was just like, oh no, they're gonna kill me. Oh freak, they got me. Or like at one part when you're walking in the moving planks, you're walking on a walkway, and then there's like wall parts in between, and then it's open air, and there's just like a loud just like that hits you. And
mhm.
like when it does that, you just see all this stuff fly, and you're like, okay, I think I'm pretty sure it's gonna kill me if it hits you. And it makes it so like eerily and creepy, and it increases your anxiety for it because all you hear is nothing, and then when the noise hits, it's just really loud, and then you see everything come towards you, and you're running as a character, and you're hoping you're gonna make it to that safe spot, and just like, all right, I got behind the safe spot, and like, or you'll run it, and like you're about to make it, and it just hits you, you're like, oh no, it's like I was so close, like there's so many moments in that game where it just got me, and I was just like, oh, like frustrated, anxious, but I was still having so much fun playing. I was like, I can beat this. I know I can. I was like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing wrong. I just got to fix that problem.
Mhm. I think for me, and I brought up the game before, but The Last of Us 2 actually had a pretty good moment for me where yeah, because that while you're kind of crawling around a lot, you're trying to get into other spots, but there was just one spot where you basically drop down to like a really low end of a level. It is like pitch black, and you're like, I'm probably gonna have to fight a boss in this area because everything kind of leads up to me. But when you're trying to go through it, you're slowly kind of creeping in, and sure enough, you get to one part where like you fought the most ugliest looking thing in ever, but you can't see anything, and you're trying to fight this guy with like this hyper attention. You're oh shit, I'm stuck on the wall. No, like it took a while for me to beat it too. But it was like, God, I hate finding these things and stuff because I'm literally like trying to find every type of ammo while I'm also trying to run from this guy and. But it's like it was creepy, because it was like, yeah, it was like a really dark spot of the game. Like I said, at this point, sound design is getting a lot better and all that, right? And
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, you're freaking out. And then when I finally beat it and escaped, and it like allows you like, here's light. You're like, oh, I enjoy the light again. Please come to me. I don't want to do that twice. Don't have another level like that. No, no, no. Don't do
No, no,
that.
no. It's games like that like where you when you beat that one part of that and you just kind of like put the controller on and give yourself a break. You're like, oh God, I did it. My heart's like going a million miles a second, but I beat that part. I'm a badass. Like that's what it makes you feel.
Mhm. Yeah, no, games like that just kept doing that. Oh God, what other games? I guess I don't remember other too much. Like you said, we hit on Shadow Hearts and stuff. Like that was actually really good example of that. Was another game that you kind of felt like it wasn't really like it's not horror, but it definitely did sell it.
Um, it wasn't really well, it was horror and stuff like that in a sense, so it doesn't fit under this category. But I really enjoyed playing the Friday the 13th game for a little bit with some friends and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Because that was the same one of like being like it was really cool like getting to experience like I mean I grew up watching these movies all the time with my older sister and stuff like that because she's like an insane horror movie fan. And so it was like when the game came out, I was just like, all right, I want to check it out. Like, let's see how close it could get to me from remembering from the movies and stuff like that. And playing that game was just so much fun to play and stuff like that because you get to choose like your camp counselor that you are and stuff like that. And they all
Hmm.
had different attributes for everything and stuff like that. And you have like just fun, dumb moments and stuff like that. Where I remember one time I was playing with a friend and everything, and like the Jason was like another player that we didn't know and stuff like that. But in order to freaking like for us to like try and beat the game or just win it in a sense was I filled up the car with the gas so that so we could get running, and my friend got into the car, and I was like gonna go run to the door, but Jason was there, and I was like, "No, screw it." Like, I was like, "Just go, just try it." Like I just let Jason like kill me or some of that, and they drove off, and we were like, "I was like, you gotta kill me," but we won.
Now, you know what? That actually brought up another question I had in mind. Do you enjoy games like horror games like that are actually based off the shows? Like, would you have enjoyed a Scream like horror game if it was something like similar or something like that? The same way as like Friday the 13th.
Oh yeah, I would actually love it. Like I think that's one of the beauties of like that's how like Dead by Daylight really did it right because they got a good core of the game to play and stuff like that, and then they started getting all these like franchises and stuff like that to get added into the game. Like when the Stranger Things thing came out and stuff for that game, like my son was just like, "Oh my god!" Because he like fell in love with Stranger Things, as you should as like a 10 to 12 year old during this time when it's been coming out, and him and his friends would play it and stuff like that together. And when the Stranger Things part came out, I was like, "Oh, dude, I'll jump in with you." And so I jump into it with him, and then we make sure to choose like we do our own custom games with him and his friends, and then go into that go into the Stranger Things like actual level, and then one of them would be the freaking I forgot what they're called, the little monster and stuff like that, and then we would just be whoever we want, and then like vice versa, turn it on its head. We I ended up like since I'm the adult out of the group and stuff like that, I ended up buying like the expansion for Pyramid Head and stuff like that, and for the girl from Silent Hill 3 to be playable. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, here we go. And so like we would take turns being the killer, right? And so like I didn't know that I purchased this and stuff like that. And it was like, oh, it's your turn to be a killer. I was like, all right, cool. And so I go and I choose Pyramid Head, and all you hear is like I'm on the pause, it's just like, what? That's not fair. No, what? No way. And I'm like, you all ready to die? And I just went around and like it was my first time playing as him. And so I had to learn the mechanics of how he worked and some of that. And once I figured it
Hmm.
out, I just started murdering them left and right. And it'd be like I would like purposely let him start running away and then use one of his specials and then boom, hit him and kill him. Like they're like, no, dude, that's not fair. I was like, sorry, man, I got you.
It's like if it happened in the game, it's completely fair.
Yep.
You thought you were gonna run away from me? Uh-uh.
Never.
I got age on my side. Oh, Jesus Christ. Uh, I don't know. Like I for me, I probably would. So sometimes I kind of back away from it a little bit. Just because it's like, how do I enjoy it as much like if I would? Because I'm like that with a lot of things. Like if there's like an existing show for it, it has to the game has to be in a certain way. Like anime games, I don't really play like their anime version, like the One Piece game
Yeah.
that's coming out and stuff. Like I don't I don't see a need to play it. Like it has to be something where it's like, like I'm not really into it because it's like, if I'm just playing like the anime or whatever, then it's not as fun. Like I already know what happens. Like there's no into. But so when it comes to, like the horror games and stuff, it's like if it's like a little like you're just playing like the movie, that is not as fun. And I think that's normally my first impression for a lot of this stuff. But when I games like that, where it's all like, hey, we found a way to kind of combine a lot of like our favorite horror icons into something and stuff, I'm more inclined to try something like that because those are really interesting to kind of see those kind of happen. And like I said, they bring a different type of dynamic of play when you're like, oh, you now you get to be one of the people that have no power and stuff. Like kind of, I thought what Dragon Ball kind of did that now, where they're trying to
Yeah,
do that now in like kind of like their universe, and I think that's why probably people are a little bit kind of interested in that because it's not like it's not another game of like what's it like to be Goku and stuff like. No, what is it like to be in a world where everybody else seem like they're just gods and you just have your best idea is just to run as fast as you can? It's like don't to me that's more exciting like when you kind of put it like
yeah,
in that lens. And so those are the kind of things that like I do enjoy those type of games, but like I had that pre assumption that it's like am I just playing the movie because I really don't want to do that. I don't have
yeah.
the time for that kind of thing.
I like you highlighted it right now, but Robert Games talked about the EMIs and Metroid Dread. Like I didn't play Metroid Dread, but my favorite game of all time is Super Metroid. And playing that when I was like little and stuff like that, like there's definite moments in that game where it just scared the poop out of me and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where especially like when you first show up and on the freaking because I played the first original Metroid and beat it and everything like that because my brother-in-law helped me out to play do like where to go and how to beat it and stuff like that. And so when Super Metroid came out and I played it on my own. And so you go down to the planet for the first time and like everything's dead as it was when you won. And I just get to feel like, oh, what the heck is going on? Like, why is everything dead? And then all of a sudden, like everything starts to come to life and I started freaking out and getting scared. And then at the end, you have the same thing where you have to run out of the planet, get out of there before it ends. And like
Mhm.
that whole part, like especially when I was little, just gave me so much anxiety. Like just playing through it. It wasn't until like it had to be like my fifth or sixth time that I played that game where I started going, okay, cool. I know I have to do this. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. I gotta do this. All right, cool. Now I got out. And to this
Mhm.
day, like when I play a game, it's like it still gets me a little bit. Like when I get to the mother brain, and like she freaking gets into her giant mode and shoots her beam, and like you think you're gonna die. It still kind of gets me where it's just like my inner child hits me. It's just like, oh no, I'm gonna die. I was like, no, wait. The big Metroid's going up. Big Metroid comes, brings you back to life. I'm like, yes, yes, this moment's so good.
Do you like games where like you're trapped in like an area and you're just trying to find a way to get out?
Sometimes, because I can get really frustrated in those games. Like that's one of the reasons why I think I have a hard time going back to playing some of like the old school like horror games, stuff like that, like playing the old school Resident Evils and stuff like that. Because with the mechanics of it at the time up to now, it's just like you go back, you get trapped in a certain area, you're too low on ammo and stuff like that, and it's just like it frustrates me and it doesn't become fun anymore. It's like, all right, like I'm not having fun, I'm not being spooked, I'm not being anything, so like I'm done with this. Get out of my life. Let's move on to something else.
I tend not to like games where the whole game is based on a single area. So like I know I played Resident Evil before, but I wasn't really fond of it just being in the house and like this big
Yeah.
old mansion and you're just kind of going on like it adds to the scariness. So like I kind of excused it for this case. But there's like another game, Uncharted, the first game, that like I enjoyed it, but I didn't like the fact that I was trapped on an island underground kind of thing. It was just like for as long as the gameplay session is, it kind of gets a little tiring because you're just like, I just need other scenery or I just need something else like to be different because it just feels like, oh, I'm just going down to like a very, very deep pyramid. And when two came out and you were going all the other places, I think that's why I really enjoyed the game more. Is when like, okay, oh yeah, we're going to different places, going to different cities, different action is happening. That's kind of where they liked it. So like I know for some games, I'm like, okay, if it plays on the aesthetics of the game or like hey like this is a big part of the game that's why it's kind of here and stuff and that's why it's so big and stuff I normally excuse it but a lot of times like I do hate it when it's all like like all it just feels like a dungeon crawler like in a way but
Yeah.
it's like it's supposed to be more than that it's like you're just kind of like oh what happens if you never saw the outside world you just everything happens in the dungeon kind of thing.
Yeah. It definitely gets frustrating. Like I think that's why I love like Metroidvania games for the most part so much. Because like playing Metroid or Castlevania or even what's it called, Hollow Knight and stuff like that, like they it gives you that aspect of because it's like all in like one certain area, one certain planet and stuff like that, or like in Castlevania's case, it's like you're in Dracula's castle and stuff like that. But they do a really good job of creating a different atmosphere per level or per area that you go in, where it you go into one area and it's just completely different to the first area you went to, which when you like start the game off, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm in a castle and here's a zombie and here's this, and now I kill
Mhm.
this bat monster and stuff like that, dies, and then you go into the next level and it's like, okay, now I'm like in a swampy area and I'm outside and there's like kind of like swamp thing creatures and stuff like that going after me and stuff like that. Like they they do they do a really really good job of changing up the environments so that way even though you're in the quote unquote same area, it doesn't feel the same because you have to completely change the mechanics the way you play and stuff like that. Because either the enemies change, they add something new into the biomes and stuff like that that you have to react to, or you have to find like a weapon or something like that to open a certain area that ends up adding another mechanic on top of it. That's those things make it like super super fun and like really really enjoyable for me.
Gotcha. I agree on that. I think some games just have a good way of just handling it and stuff. Because I feel like, especially with like what as much as I played of Hollow Knight, is kind of going down, and actually experiencing a lot of different stuff. Even though technically you're just kind of going down, it did have that aspect of like you're doing it because there's a lot more branches to this area than it's not linear or anything. It's like there's a lot more things to discover. The whole point of the game is kind of really like to discover, go down, try to find stuff, and then come up to air when you need to kind of do so and stuff. So those, like I said, there are just some games that I excuse a little bit more because it works with the aesthetic of the game. Hades is like that. Like you're just trying to get out, but you're always going back or whatever, kind of get stronger and stuff. So like again, I excuse it because it's like the whole point is like you are trying to escape this whole thing. So
Yeah,
what's
that's
another
kind
one?
of that's kind of like going back to it. Like if you think about it, like Metroidvania games are kind of one of those games where like they're not technically like horror games or stuff like that, but most like probably 90% of them have some kind of weird spooky aspect to them. Like you have Castlevania, which is of course like you're a vampire hunter and stuff like that. You have
Hmm.
Metroid, where you're a space bounty hunter and stuff like that, and you go into weird, creepy areas. You have Hollow Knight, where it just has weird, eerie, creepy sounds going underground and stuff like that.
And
You
everything's
have
based on insect.
Death's Door, which is like about death and stuff like that and everything, and it has like a bunch of like weird, creepy ambiances because there's something going on in the background and stuff like that. Like it's I just noticed that.
Hmm. And this comment I think helps out a lot. The sense of being alone in a huge world can be scary. I think that does like kind of sell it right then and there. It's just when you do like because there's two feelings to it. You could be like it's me versus the world, and you're just literally just solo punching everybody, or me versus the world, and I'm not really a fan of this world. It's coming after me, kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Like it just kind of well branches into these things and stuff, and they both create epic moments, but like they'd have both different feelings. A lot of that stuff is like one, you're for like you could feel that, oh, I'm really glad I was able to complete all the challenges and stuff, and then there's another one, you're like, I'm just king of the world, yeah, like yeah, we're done, the kind of thing. And so it's a lot of it's a really good experience. Like I think horror has a lot of aspects to it that actually branches off and has a good way of kind of like being into other games and stuff like we discussed today, where we can really kind of dive into like, hey, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of going on, or we can create these feelings and stuff. And there's just no better way to kind of get someone more involved is just to scare the heebie-jeebies out of them. It's just like that's always kind of like the best thing you could really do. And I appreciate when developers are still trying today.
Oh yeah. I think one thing we could probably start to head towards too, and since we're heading towards like the last 15 minutes of this,
Mhm.
is how indie developers are actually doing a really good job with like the horror genre and kind of changing the game and stuff like that, and kind of becoming like the spotlight for horror games in general and stuff like that.
Like I told you, man, like horror games say, or no, the indie whole scene saved horror games
Yeah.
because it you realize, because I like to look at Five Nights at Freddy's as a real good example of how much little stuff that you can actually do as a great concept, because it was all made by one guy. And so you have all those really high like kind of boundaries that one guy can't do a lot of stuff in a certain way. There's ways that you have to kind of do this little trick to kind of get this feeling. There's ways that you have to present stuff out so that it weighs more than it is without like realizing like, oh, well, this game's not 3D. The game's not like very expensive. You find very interesting things because of a lot of the requirements that you can't meet, and that you actually come up with something very unique. And that one was a I feel like a good case study of like, how can we make something that people are already kind of scared of, but make it like really scary. And it's like animatronics that come to life. Okay, that's a nice idea, but how do we make it that actually scary?
Yeah.
And you kind of build on top of that, and like the what was like the ha 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 was actually like a child laugh and stuff. Something where it's all like you can just morph stuff to be a lot more demented than it was. And like I said, you weren't going to a lot of different places. You were literally a guy in one spot trying to check every camera, try to make sure that these things don't get close to you and stuff and survive the night. And it just worked out really well, and I feel like it can only come from an indie, kind of scene. Like
Yeah.
it's just not because if a 3D or like AAA were to try and build out a game, like people just have certain expectations. Like they're like, oh, what this couldn't have taken 2 years to do. Like, or we've seen how some people kind of go off the deep end and all of that. But when something like this, where you give them to try, and then it really hits like a pop culture sensation, and everybody's, Twitch games are happening, YouTube is showing stuff up, and like a game like this is blows up. I feel like this is like a good example of like how even you don't need a lot to make a really good horror game. You just need, be consistent what you want to do and really kind of show off like, like just kind of like the what actually makes people scared, what
Yeah.
actually kind of invokes that feeling into people. So I always use Five Nights at Freddy's as a really good example of that because, when you first play that first game, I think everybody has the same feeling about it, and why I think it really was fun for people to really dive in and watch and play.
Yeah. Even like bringing it a little bit more kind of modern in the sense is like Phasmophobia is another one where they took kind of the similar aspect that's been for bigger publishing stuff, like where it's like you have like that you're a group of people trying to do this one thing, stuff like that, but it put on its head because you're basically ghost hunters going into it with with your friends in multiplayer. And as you play the game and stuff like that, the ghosts, it can get you individually and stuff like that. And the way they do that a lot is through sound design and stuff like that. So it's like you could be playing with your friend and you'll hear like the ghost talk to you in your headphone, and you're like, hey, did you hear that? And you're like, no, I didn't hear what? I'm in the other room. I didn't hear nothing. You know what I mean? And like it's those type of little mechanics and stuff like that that like are genius and also simple at the same time, because it's a small team being like, hey, I want to create this game, but I don't have the team or the budget to do this grandiose thing. So what can I do to change it up? And it's like, oh, let's use sound design. And so they do that for that aspect. And it became a huge like hit on Twitch and stuff like that, and like a must play most of the time during like spooky season and stuff like that. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And it's just like another one that I do want to play and stuff like that is Inscription, which I think came out last year. And it's a I don't know exactly how to describe the game, but it's kind of like a simulated game, but also has a card game aspect to it. But
Yeah, I remember it.
like the vibes of it and stuff like that are just very like eerie and creepy and stuff like that. And I hear like the story overall is just very, very well in that game. And it's like that's the type of game that just sounds like it's right up my alley when it comes to it. Because if it's
And
kind of
it's
had some good,
a lot. Well, say I just want to say, like a lot of these horror games that we keep looking back on, like when we started looking at Eternal Darkness and all that, have some really high reviews for what they are. Just
yeah,
let me see if I can actually kind of present, kind of like the other screen. I don't need to do audio. Just there goes screen too. So just kind of like going like that, like just a lot of the audio's retention score on it was like, yeah, like 4.9 out of 10. Like the game's been out for like a year, like you said, and it's just like 10 out of 10 on Steam, 97% Humble Bundle, 4.4 out of 5 demo. You can play right now, GeForce Now and stuff. Like you just have like a lot of these games actually have really high reviews, like
yeah,
really surprisingly, right? it's just like, man, like you like some of these games, like I said, they work within their the concept. They try to enhance it, try to do better, but a lot of these games come out on top.
Yeah,
It's like, and of course they're indie games. You haven't heard the people behind it, but some people gave it a shot. And like I said, I just like, dude, Jesus, like that kind of says a lot right then and there. And so kind of gives people more to like, really like try it out and play it and stuff.
yeah, for sure. It's exciting to see the horror genre move forward and stuff like that, and see what's gonna come up next. Because you have so much great like in developers doing new and fresh things, and it goes back to a thing we talked about earlier. Like I want to see a big publishing company or AAA studio take charge of one of these type of ideas and see what they can really do with it. You know what I mean? Give it
Hmm.
that clean polish, that like insane, amazing sound quality and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, because if you do it right, you could definitely be like a big hit and stuff like that. But it's just a matter of like how you gonna do it right. Like Resident Evil can do it because it has the name both Capcom and Resident Evil behind it because it's a staple. It's been there forever and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And it'll be really interesting to see going forward what the new Silent Hill is going to be like, if it's going to hit or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I believe Silent Hill 2 remake will be for the most part a slam dunk, unless like for some reason Blooper has like a lot of bugs in it and stuff like that. That's the only thing I think could bring it down.
Yeah.
But like the new one, Silent Hill F, is like this is going to be a completely brand new game. This is their opportunity to try and do like the Resident Evil effect and like create like a new game and hopefully make it like a hit. And I hope it does, because you want to see these more big budget horror games come out.
I will say, I'm really hopeful for it, quite honestly, because I think Silent Hill kind of really needed some more love for what the kind of franchise. It's another one of those that's been in gaming for a while, but it hasn't really been touched. It's just kind of like, hey, like remember that game that really kind of gave that scared us at one point. What happened to it, kind of thing. It's like I remember they had a lot of titles and stuff. But I remember like a lot of their later entries didn't really hit as well, if I remember
Hmm.
correctly. I got to go check, but I do remember
Oh
like a
yeah,
lot of them didn't keep like the same kind of spirit. So remaking two, which obviously I feel like a pretty good point to do, and like some of the screenshots and stuff have looked really nice for like the game. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how Silent Hill actually does now in today's world. Because like I said, I feel like us as gamers are a lot harder to please now because something really has to be worth their time. And you
yeah,
see a lot of people really hold on to their older titles, to their fond memories and stuff because we all want to be trans, you know, just really just go back in time and experience a lot of that stuff. We want the feeling that we were able to capture that one time again and really want to feel it again. And sometimes it's like, I guess I'll just play the old game again because like I feel like that's probably the closest I'm gonna get. And a lot of new games, they kind of miss that mark a little bit. Like some of them are trying to maybe input new technology. They're trying to get it to a wider audience and stuff. Like a lot of gaming doesn't really like to play in niches as much as they used to. Like some
yeah,
games have to have something that like how do we get the most amount of people instead of like how do we get like the most out of people within a particular niche to really love this. And I don't know. It could be a bad thing, could be a good thing, but I am wondering if the new Silent Hill is going to focus on being that Silent Hill game, being something that they understand the audience, they play toward the audience, or are they going to start adding some features to stuff because they know that we can get somebody 10 years old to play it and someone who's 22 to like deal with it basically. It's
right,
like because that's what it is. Like when you're older and stuff, it's just you want higher stimulus and stuff, and a lot of times our attention spans is not that long, even for older people. Like that's why TikTok's such a big thing now. Because
yeah,
some stuff could just be delivered in 15 seconds. You could be just as satisfied, and you go on to the next thing. It's just really hard today to kind of get a lot of these other aspects to really be popping off of like that. So, like, I'm really hopeful. I hope it kind of goes down to it, but it's a big challenge today than it was, yesterday.
yeah. And this will be I'm glad Konami's finally starting to like try and do the right, not do the right thing, but finally try to do something with this IP. And this will go back to one of our comments here too in the chat. It was like it says Symphony of the Night, like with so many great Metroidvanias that have come out, Symphony of the Night is still probably one of like the goats of ever of that type of genre to come out. And so now, if Konami's trying to dabble into bringing back some of these IPs, I mean, they have a really good chance to try and give a good shot at making a new Castlevania that could be really, really good and hit those moments and stuff like that. Like, I know like other people have tried it in the same sense of like how the person who did Mighty Number 9 tried to do like their own thing off of that. And like you had Bloodstained that came out, which is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is like a spiritual successor. And I played through that game and I literally got like so close to the final boss, but just the mechanics of it and like how it played and stuff like that, it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel so smooth. It didn't feel so great. And so I stopped playing it. Like I knew I was close to finishing. I knew I was super close to finishing, but I was just like, I'm having a struggle with this one mini boss, stuff like that, and I'm just like, it's just not hitting it right for me anymore. I am gonna go ahead and just leave it out and hope that someday someone else can make either another spiritual successor to it, that or Konami can hopefully try and take a dab at it. And I hope they do now since they started doing it with Silent Hill.
You said Mighty Number 9, and I couldn't hold that shiver back. I was just like, oh god, that hit that hit a little bit different. Like you want to see something scary, it's just like, hey, we're gonna have the spiritual successor to Mega Man, and it's like, oh, I remember the hype and stuff too, and I remember putting money behind the project. So I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. I think what he's trying to do is really awesome. And then we saw gameplay of it, and it's like, how much money did we give this man? I was like, no. Yeah. Now that is the best horror game.
Those are the best horror games.
Yeah. Well, I think we kind of got up to time. I think we kind of made like this episode kind of work out. There's a lot of stuff with horror. As well, we can make a whole 2 hours about it because there's just a lot of stuff, and kind of going back down memory lane a little bit, you kind of realize like, oh, you know what, horror game was a part of my life for a good minute of it. Like there was a lot of times where I could say even was a good bookmark of some of the stuff that happened around that time. You know, it's like just a book like checkpoint of like, oh, I remember high school, I remember blah blah blah, because I remember doing this around that time. So I really think the horror drama is pretty good. It was kind of going down. I do like a lot of these projects, kind of really bringing it back up, really selling it and stuff. And all I can say is I'm just hoping for more of it. Any final thoughts?
I think the horror genre is in a much better state than it was like in the past 10 years and stuff like that. Like it's really come back with like a really strong punch in the face and say, hey, like we're here to stay. And it's a genre that like you can tell is sustainable and people want it and they want more of it. And there's signs of it from the Resident Evil series, just popping them out left and right. Like they're having like a bunch of children and stuff like that. And to the point where like we brought up multiple times, Dead by Daylight is one of those games where it's been out for so long and it still has concurrent players. It's still making money. It's still doing its thing. People still love playing it. People still love streaming that game. You know what I mean? Like there's so much out there in horror that's starting to like be really, really good, and you can see more coming to light. And hopefully I just hope this trajectory just keeps going upward. It's a slow up, but I'd rather have a slow up than it being where it was before.
Yeah, because any effort is just effort at all, and I'm like I said, I'm for it. So with that, I shall end this with the only Halloween costume I put on here. I put the Batman one on there, but that one can definitely take some health and stuff.
That could definitely scare some people.
Yeah, it's actually, you know what? I'm gonna do that. Screw that. This was really good, but I have to sell this. The Batman thing was just like this mask. Like I had ordered it, but hold on real quick.
I will tell everyone, like when he sent me a picture of this mask, and yeah, it was just it was scary.
This mask works out so well. Like it's like really close, but Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah. Batman's here to end the podcast. That's all like. So I guess I'll end it with this because yeah, like I said, this actually works out really well. Like if I actually painted the eyes black here, like you just really couldn't tell.
Yeah.
And I can hear you a little bit, so I think I'm able to talk. It's just weird because it's like I'm trying to say everything that I can. But as I look at camera, everybody, thank you for joining us today. You know, this is another episode of Game Over 30. If you had any comments or you want to just talk about your favorite Halloween game, horror game, anything along the sort, please comment down below. If you had a chance or if you just missed us this time around, we're doing a show every Friday, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And I forgot 5 or whatever it is for Pacific. Times and math right not in here as much as I wanted to be, but we really do appreciate you for joining us, commenting. Thank you everybody in chat. We'd like to see you next time. And like I said, we're gaming over 30. Check out our old videos on YouTube if you haven't got a chance. But until then, we'll see you next time. I'm Batman.
Latest.